Hi, I'm Blake Rayhans.
And I'm Stacie Mallon.
And you are listening to the Optimized AF podcast.
We know life is hard. We're here to make it simple.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the Optimized AF podcast. This is Blake Rayhans.
And I'm Stacie Mallon. And today we're talking turkey, Blake.
Gobble Gobble Motherfu.
It was a dare.
I did
dare
it. I won the dare
accepted.
Challenge accepted.
Challenge accepted. I don't know what you were supposed to win. But
I don't know. I win the fact that you put a challenge in front of me. I'm gonna go after it.
There you go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So today we are talking about Thanksgiving. It's coming up.
It's not a topic you probably would have expected from us, but
No.
You know what? When you think about how do I take the complexity and make it simple, let's talk about hosting your family over for the upcoming holiday season.
Yeah, gives everybody a nervous breakdown.
I'm sweating right now just thinking about it.
So I think I think sometimes when you do work on yourself, sometimes things come up for you, especially during family gatherings.
Oh, yeah.
And just in our experience, how you show up for those gatherings, how you maybe even prepare, maybe you have conversations with people ahead of time. I think sometimes that's a really good thing to do. And it came up because we were talking about how can we talk about something that's relevant for the right now. So we talked a little bit about, do we talk about the election, not the election itself, but elements of what's happening in the world today, but sort of this interesting perfect storm, in my opinion, about Thanksgiving coming up, because will people get together or will they not? And then it will be just post-election, so there will probably still be a lot of drama.
Yep.
And then you mix in your crazy uncle and your aunt that drinks too much wine and your passive-aggressive mom factor or mother-in-law factor. And then you take a big wooden spoon with your children and all their hyperactivity. And it really is the perfect recipe for potential insanity and disaster.
It has all the elements of a recipe to just derail you and really throw things off. And right, there's sort of like, we'll break this down. There's really two roles you can play in this as far as a family get-together goes. You're either attending or you're hosting. Mm-hmm. And there's some constants throughout all of those roles. If you're in the room with the family, and like you said, the crazy uncle and the aunt that drinks too much, the kids running all over the place. But when you're hosting it, it's a whole different thing. And I think that's where we get to the point of like, well, for those individuals, how do you make that experience this year a little bit better? How do you take that angst and stress and bring it to a place where it's, a little more manageable?
And I think we'll go to the conversation we've been having for the last few episodes, which is about mindset. And I do think it has a lot to do with mindset. I think if you walk into this situation with the mindset that it's going to be chaotic and terrible, it probably will be. And I do think it has to do with boundaries. I think there's a part of creating boundaries that people get very uncomfortable doing that with their family.
Oh, yes.
But I think it's probably more applicable with family than it is with anyone else, because they're naturally in your life. So the boundary has to be, I think, more clear. And I've mentioned this before, but in navigating the space of working through things in my personal life, one of the elements that was highly relevant was being with someone who was an addict, being married to somebody who was an addict. And if you learn anything out of that whole process, hopefully, what you walk out the other side understanding is nothing is more important than boundaries. Your personal boundaries and your personal expectations. And I am very clear now about my personal boundaries. And it doesn't mean that I don't have moments where that gets hard for me too and will always be challenging. But I think I'm in a space at this point in my life where I don't have room for people who don't want to show up in a positive way. So I think one thing you can do if you're hosting, especially, And if you're not hosting, you don't have to go to somebody. There's no obligation.
Well, let's stop there, because I think that with family especially, that's where we get into that area where everybody feels obligated.
Mm-hmm.
There's this
dirty word to me.
Oh, it is. I mean, especially this year. Let's take it for really what it is, right? You don't know. You're probably listening to this. You've probably taken the recommended steps to limit your circle. Likely it's your immediate household. Maybe there's a couple other people involved in your circle that you're coming into contact with on a regular basis, but Thanksgiving dinner is not that way. Thanksgiving dinner usually involves, well, there's other families coming in, there's maybe extended family, there's maybe some people coming in that aren't even from the local area. They're coming in from a completely different state or something to that effect. And this year you're sort of going, okay, well, have you been masking up? What have you been doing? And now we're bringing all that into one place. And so, some experts are saying, CDC or whoever, maybe you ought to not do that. Maybe everybody ought to get tested beforehand. And you start to get into this weird space this year of, it's just bringing my family together. Right. Why should I? But when you look at the considerations and the obligation, people are going to have some tough decisions to make to say, okay, well, this year, is it really that important that we all get together? Maybe not. But the other thing I think you were talking about setting boundaries, I think it's interesting, and I want to kind of have a conversation about this, is why is it so much harder to set boundaries with the people that are closest to us, even though those people should be the ones that are the most understanding?
Allegedly.
under duress.
Yeah. And again, I just tap into a space for me of this journey of not having any boundaries in life with particular people, and then forming those boundaries over time, and then letting those boundaries go sometimes, and then it didn't end well when that happened. And so what I learned is that boundaries are challenging for people because our perception is it's hurting the other person, typically, that words are powerful. So to say to someone, it's not acceptable to me to have you in my life if you are going to X, Y, and Z. So an example of that, I think, is with our children. It's easier for us to say to someone, I can't accept you in our lives if it's detrimental to my child in this way. That feels a little easier, right? Because as parents, we're programmed to be highly protective of our children. But I think the thing that we need to be even more protective of is ourself. And we don't do that as well. And I think ourself and our spouse or significant other, whoever you have in your life, I'm a big believer that foundational element of you and your spouse, and we've talked about this before, is a core central element. And human beings are so wired for that connection that if you are not holding that really sacred in your life, then everything else can end up really getting very blurry. But I think if you're very clear about the boundaries and expectations that you have as a couple, it makes it easier for me to have boundaries and expectations for myself. But if we're being honest, you should protect your own boundaries over and above anyone else's. Yeah. And I don't think most people are good at doing that.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I mean, the personal story from us, actually, I shout out and commend my wife for this, because years ago, we began hosting. We hosted Thanksgiving. We had all the family over, her side of the family, my side of the family. We don't have large families, but it had grown, to a significant amount of people that would come over. And, we had to have that hard conversation. And I say hard, loosely, because it shouldn't have been a difficult conversation, but all the things we were talking about came flooding in. This heavy obligation of, well, it's a holiday, we're supposed to bring the family all together. And well, that person is, a sibling or even a step sibling, and they happen to have a new girlfriend. And so that person should be able to come over. And it's like, all of a sudden now it's not 12 people, it's 37 people. And we sat down one time, I remember talking about this with her, because Thanksgiving happened to have been, and it still is, one of her favorite holidays. And
It's my favorite.
It became,
and not just the mashed potatoes. I mean, the whole thing. I do love the mashed potatoes.
The mashed potatoes are a big deal. The biscuits for me, the crescent rolls and the biscuits. But it became something where she didn't enjoy it at all. Yeah. It wasn't the specifics of the people. It was that the elements of the holiday were not enjoyable for her, as the burden of hosting became too large. The lack of appreciation and assistance, the lack of involvement, I think just too many people just showing up, and not really being involved in the process of it. And it was sort of one little thing after the other little thing where like we sat back and go, that was not an enjoyable day for her or really for me at all.
Right.
Let's face it,
because you love her and
absolutely
watching her be.
Yeah, I'm watching her, and I'm heavily involved too. I'm the one that's brining the turkey and waking up at 2:30 in the morning and doing this. So we're both heavily involved in making this day incredibly special and doing all these things, and yet neither one of us was really enjoying it. And then by extension, our children. And so we had to have a reset. We really decided, what was important for us is, yes, we love our extended family, but we really needed, to your point, Stacie, look at ourselves first. And we made a decision of how do we want to enjoy this time together. For us specifically, it meant, we're unfortunately not going to host anymore. And we're actually going to turn this into a tradition for our immediate family of we go to Disneyland every year. Beautiful over there. They got it all dressed up for the holidays. The weather's really nice typically. This year, unfortunately, we won't be going, so we'll be a change of plans. But that was not as easy of a place for us to arrive at as it should have been.
Yeah, I just like everything we talk about in optimizing life. For me, the first step is to say, if I were to paint the picture of the very best Thanksgiving ever, what would it look like? For myself personally, like with no holds barred and no obligations and no rules, what does that day look like for me? What would feel the best? And the answer is I would probably still get up and work out, number one, right? And so many people go, oh my gosh, I have to start cooking at 7:00 in the morning. So you create a day that is full of obligation and not of what is going to feel super aligned. I'm not saying you don't sacrifice sometimes things for people, because it's not always just about yourself, right? But what is a day that would feel really good? And what are the things that you can do? So for example, honey baked ham has some really, really good stuff that you don't have to make.
Yeah.
Or lots of places cater things. And maybe you can't afford to do that, but maybe you do more of a potluck style, so you're not having to make all the food. But maybe your joy is maybe your love is to make the food and feed the people you love. It's not the same formula for every single person. Yeah. I love making the food. But there are certain elements of it that I don't enjoy. But there is something for me, very maternal for me, of feeding my people that feels really good to me. So I like to do it, but there are certain things, like the turkey is not my favorite thing, if I'm being totally honest. Yeah, it's not the turkey for me that's like, yes, I want to make the perfect turkey. I think turkey's really tricky and it kind of sucks. Like I'd rather order the turkey already done or close to done or whatever it looks like. And by the way, like half of my children don't even like the turkey. So it's like, then you have all this crap. So I feel like we've sort of navigated to this space where I order a honey baked ham. It's like really super easy. We have a turkey that's super easy, and I do the things that I like to do. And then I can get up in the morning and do my workout, have a really great kick-ass morning for myself, be ready to go. And then again, we've really reduced the circle pretty dramatically. And I think that's because it really is about what feels best for us as a family. And that is not really just about who's your family, but sometimes we have people that don't have a place to go. Last year we had several people over that didn't have family in town, and it felt really good to have people in that are not related to you, that bring a different perspective to the table. I think we had more interesting conversations. But here's a tip, and I shared this with Blake. There's and we'll put a link to this. There are decks of cards that now I think lots of people make them, but I get them from a particular company, Best Self Company, and we have them on the table. And especially with the election and all the things going on right now, for example, but they're like conversation starter cards. And I did this a couple years ago, and it's kind of an awesome thing, especially if you have friends there or people that are not part of your immediate family. You're sharing in an authentic way with one another, just certain views and opinions and hopes and dreams and wishes that I felt like we really learned a lot about each other. So that's a tip I would give to people. Like it's not, you're not going to get into emotionally charged conversations. It keeps it pretty light, but at the same time, you're hearing really personal, authentic things from people that are a little bit more thought provoking. I think especially when you have teenage kids, like, we were at dinner. We were eating dinner with my son and his girlfriend last night. It's my son's senior swim meet last night, his senior night. So we got Thai food and we were eating. And she asked him, she said, what's your favorite country on each continent? And what's your least favorite country on each continent and why? Not that he's ever been in any of these places, but just from his perspective. And it reminded me of that. Like he was kind of going around the globe. We got to Antarctica and he's like, I guess it's my best and my worst. It's the only country. Is it a country? It's a continent? I don't know. So then we got into a discussion about Antarctica. But I think those are the things that do help if you're having kind of a mixed group of people or a family. So that's one piece of advice. It might be kind of silly for people, but I think having, getting conversation starter decks or something where, during this time, you're getting to know each other on a different level than I think maybe you should. Because for me, the primary point outside of mashed potatoes, which are my favorite of Thanksgiving, and I do make my own mashed potatoes because that is the most important food on the table.
Absolutely.
Is connecting with people. I mean, shouldn't that be the point?
Yep.
Is connection.
No matter what you're doing, if you have a large gathering, small gathering, like my wife and our family do, you get away and you travel and you just keep it your close, nucleus family. The idea behind it is connection. It's not about the damn turkey. It's not about the mashed potatoes. I'm not trying to offend you, Stacie.
Hey, now.
But it's about the connection. Get to know your family on a deeper level. So, again, practical optimization tips and tricks, right? If you're a guest, if you're not hosting, and as you are obligated, as most people do, or you're doing it because you really want to, and you offer to bring something, and you're told very nicely, no, it's fine. You can just come over. Guess what? If you come empty-handed, make sure you are cleaning. Okay, yeah. You're doing some damn dishes. Yeah, you're doing something other than sitting on the couch, having the conversations, and watching the football game. Okay?
Yeah, it's a community.
Here's the other thing. Mm-hmm. You're doing the Pollock thing. All right, you're responsible for the mashed potatoes. Great. Okay, you know what you need to do? Show up on time and show up with the mashed potatoes ready to go. Don't show up with a bag of fucking potatoes. All right?
Don't show up with a bag of fucking potatoes.
All right? You know who you are out there. Okay. Because you've shown up to my house. All right?
If you get assigned the roles, it means we all know you can't cook, so you're just bringing the rolls.
You're bringing the rolls, but here's
don't bring the frozen rolls.
Don't bring the frozen rolls, and don't show up at the time we're supposed to eat because the rolls need to go in the oven, and there's probably 17 other things that need. So here's the thing: is really it's about being aware of other people and what they're going through. Right? It is a day for everyone to come together and enjoy each other's company. But be empathetic to what the host is doing. Be empathetic to the other guest. Have conversations. Get to know each other on a deep level. Participate. I think that's the problem with the thing with the guest part of it is it's like, I think a lot of us anyway, we grew up and it was like we went to grandma's house. Well, you didn't have to participate when you went to grandma's house. One, because you were a grandchild. You probably didn't need to bring anything. But that was what, at least in my experience, what I was ingrained with is the few times, now this gets into like our backgrounds, I didn't have the opportunity to do this very often, but the few times that I did are very fond memories of mine. And it literally was, you showed up, nobody lifted a finger. Grandma had it on lockdown. Everything was ready to go. And it was, I remember in some years, it was like, it was time to eat. everybody knew you get your butt to the kitchen. It's time to eat. Grandma's ready.
Yep.
But,
I'm that way too.
But everybody got to enjoy it.
Don't be late for my dinner.
And my grandmother's still living. I as I bring this up, reminded I should have a conversation with her, and I wonder how she felt during those days.
Yeah, I wonder.
I never had the conversation with her. I'm gonna hold myself accountable to reaching out and asking her, because I'd imagine that, to your point earlier, Stacie, about the providing of the food is a very high point for you. I'd imagine for my grandmother it was probably the same. I bet she just found tremendous joy in that, but I'd imagine that also waned over time.
Yeah.
And so in any case, bringing it back, optimize. If you're hosting, be super clear with people. Not like, hey, can you bring the rolls? It's like, can you bring the rolls and show up 15 minutes earlier?
Exactly. Clarity is the communication is important.
I think, taking the easy button route and ordering some Boston Market, go pick it up, do it.
Yeah.
Why not?
I think it's a really good point is be aware of your role and participate and treat it as a community. I think something else is the food. Everybody has food allergies and everything else. Like if you have a food allergy, then maybe be prepared to bring your own situation. Because it's not anybody's responsibility to be responsible for that. Most people know that, most people that have food allergies. But the other thing is, like, we're in Arizona, and there is no more beautiful time of year than, for me, well, not right now. Hopefully by the time we have Thanksgiving, it's still freaking hot here. I was sweating my ass off at the swim meet yesterday. Yeah. I was a timer, and I was like, no wonder it's senior year last meet ever for my son. First time being a timer.
Yeah, I was talking to my best friend in Iowa, and he's telling me, this is just 2 days ago. He's like, yeah, I went, woke up in the morning, went off to work, went off to one of their sites. They have multiple locations, and he's like, I'm in there for a little bit, come out, and there's this small thin covering of snow on the windshield. I'm like, really? Because I'm sitting in the car line about to pick Brielle up from school, and it's 97 degrees outside.
Yeah, hotter than hell. But hopefully by Thanksgiving, I mean, we're coming together as a new family this year. And for me, it's going to be a little bit about creating some new traditions. And I'm hoping we do something a little active that day. And I'm not saying you have to go do anything grandiose or we do have enough people for a football game.
Yeah, as I say, do the turkey bowl, little flag football game.
Maybe we'll. No. But is that just going for a walk around the neighborhood, whatever it is. But I do think there's an element of, movement together would be really cool and a fun thing to do. I think a lot of people here go for hikes, so the trails are actually like crazy packed, I think, on Thanksgiving here. But, create a tradition, I think, is also something that feels really good for people. I have a really ingrained tradition on Christmas Eve, and obviously as we come together as a new family, I'm already like organized around this tradition. And my tradition is, since my children were little, Christmas Eve they get to open one thing, but the one thing is pajamas. And it used to be a fuzzy friend. Now it's a fuzzy blanket. And then something to read. And I've been doing this literally since they were born. And so to my new extended family, I'll be doing the same thing. I have to buy a lot more than I did before. But I just love, I love tradition. I think there's something about having something that feels very predictable. And my kids know, like, where, and I feel like they look forward to their pajama. Maybe I'm deluding myself and they're just nice because I'm their mama, but I feel like they kind of look forward to.
Well, if they don't now, it'll be 15 years from now.
Yep.
And they will absolutely look back and be like, I get why mom did that.
Yep.
And those are the fondest of memories for them. And they probably still hold on to many of the fur friends and the pajamas that don't fit anymore and all those things. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. You need to absolutely create some traditions that have meaning for you. As we sort of lean really into the spirit of the episode, and I know it's a little bit, Stacie and I are both aware it's a little bit of a departure from our normal content, but the idea was that There's a lot of similarities between the stress and anxiety that go into a holiday with your family, that go into the stress and anxiety that you feel as you go through your work days, the stress and anxiety that you go into a new job, the stress and anxiety that you go into being part of a mom's group for the first time, or whatever the case is. And the concepts are really relatively the same, right? Be really clear on your intentions. What matters to me in this day? What do I really want to gain from this day? And then highlight the shit out of that. Make sure it's to the top, and anything else that detracts from that, get rid of it. Mm-hmm. If your highlight of Thanksgiving is, I want to enjoy deep conversations and get to know the loved ones that are around me on a deeper level, then don't structure your Thanksgiving that anchors you to the kitchen for 6 hours.
That's true. Yeah.
Don't do it.
Yep.
Even though tradition says you have to, don't do it.
Yep.
Just don't. Like you said, to your point, you want to make food? Great. I'm going to make the one dish, the best damn mashed potatoes I can, homemade. Rest of it's coming from the grocery store.
Yeah. And I think this is a great year, again, mindset. Nothing is the same as it's ever been. No. So why not make this holiday season different as well? Take the opportunity to pare down your guest list. Take the opportunity to have really people there that feel good for you and your family. Reach out to people that maybe don't have somewhere to go, that you enjoy their company and care about them, and offer them a chance to be connected with people in a different way. Do food differently than you've ever done food. I just think it's a great opportunity this year. And I've heard a lot of negativity, but again, it's mindset's everything. To take the time to reimagine what is the best Thanksgiving you can ever think of having. And I'm not saying you have to get there in 1 year, but I think you can take steps to make it feel a lot better for yourself in what has maybe traditionally been something that's been very stressful. Now, if you love your tradition and there's nothing about that you want to change, and your big fear is everything's going to change this year, I think there are ways to recreate something that feels just as good. And it's really about identifying what elements are the most important to you. I think that is the first step. So I think that's our takeaway. A couple of things is just identify what are the really important things to you. Hold on to those things or create those things, because I think that's the first step. So I think instead of just winging it and just doing what you always do, take the opportunity to take a step back.
Yeah, we've mentioned it several times. The mindset's piece of it, in the intentionality of making this what you want it to be is important. But I do believe a lot of us get caught up in the obligation of family, and this person wants this and that person wants that, and this extended family member really loves it when we do this. I'm speaking specifically to the people that are hosting right now. If it's your home and you're hosting, it's your Thanksgiving. I understand that the spirit of hosting is to cater to and to provide for. At the end of the day, your Thanksgiving is your Thanksgiving. If somebody wants to be your guest and come over to your home, they are welcoming themselves into your Thanksgiving. Now, specifically to the guests out there, if you are going to somebody else's home, it's their Thanksgiving. Okay, be respectful of what's going on with what they want. You mentioned the food thing earlier. I'm reminded of, I'm not going to call out the person that was, but responsible for bringing over a pumpkin pie. Mm-hmm. That person happened to be a vegan. So they brought over a vegan pumpkin pie, which was the most disgusting thing I've ever tasted in my life.
Sorry, vegans. Bring your vegan pumpkin pie, but bring a regular pumpkin pie.
You want a slice of vegan pie? Great. But the rest of the 28 people that were there,
the one from Costco,
we're left really wanting that $5.99 ginormous Costco pumpkin pie.
Because that's what you're supposed to do.
That's absolutely delicious.
Yeah.
So, there's just some real practical things. And I think this episode is we're not really giving you guys probably anything that you don't really know already. It's just nice reminders. And we are definitely not authorities to give you permission. But maybe what you're getting from this episode too, with the reminder, is you're giving yourself permission. Give yourself permission to take back ownership of what you want this holiday to be. Give yourself permission to take ownership of holding people accountable, even those people that are closest to you, your family members. Have the hard conversation that should be an easy conversation of, look, hey, you know what, last year when you showed up with the damn vegan pie, don't do that shit again.
Right.
You're going to find yourself not eating at the adult table. You know what I mean?
You're
Like you're going to be banished to the kid
not
table.
Not even to the kiddie table.
No, out in the backyard.
You get to be sitting by yourself in the backyard with the dog.
We love you. You're still invited, but damn
Actually, the dog is inside. You get to go outside.
Don't
You're right.
miss Blake off during Thanksgiving.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Yeah. Maybe what you do is you say, you know what, our guest list is 25, but really there's 12 spots.
It's like Survivor.
It's like the starting lineup. Okay?
Hunger Games.
You all right?
Thanksgiving.
You want a part of the starting lineup? Don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick.
All right?
Don't bring the vegan.
Okay. Don't bring the vegan pie, and Uncle Tom don't talk about politics.
That's right. So yeah, like don't be afraid to have boundaries, I think is what we're saying. And I agree it's not anything that's rocket science, but I think it's a gentle reminder for all of us, including ourselves, to have those boundaries in place that feel good for you and your family, and hold sacred to the family that is the most immediate to you, because you know that's your tribe and your people.
Absolutely.
And those are the most important. So
and be respectful of those boundaries.
Absolutely.
If you're on the other side of it, I mean, Stacie's absolutely right. Empower yourself to set the boundaries. If you're on the receiving end of that, be respectful of the boundaries. Just because you have an idea in your head of what this should be, don't impose that on somebody else. Don't make them feel pressure. Don't add to the stress. Just accept that they've established a boundary that then works really well for them to set them up for the type of holiday they want to have, and be gracious in the fact that they want you to be a part of it, and then accept the boundary and be supportive of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't like any of this, go take a trip. Fly a kite. Yeah. Flee the scene. We used to go camping for a while, and it was just to provide that space and that time. So do what feels good for yourself and your fam. And we hope you do have an amazing Thanksgiving. We're gonna plow through the holiday season with a few more episodes, but because it's never inappropriate to optimize any aspect of your Christmas sweater party or whatever. So
absolutely.
Whatever you're doing, continue to really hold true to your belief system and what's important to you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we hope you enjoyed this little bit of a departure from our normal content, but still always in the spirit of how do we help evolve, improve, simplify the different aspects of our lives. So hope you enjoy. Again, join us next week. We drop these episodes, as a reminder, every Wednesday. You get a new episode from the Optimized AF podcast. If you have not already, please give us a like, a subscribe. Head over to our YouTube channel too if you want to not just listen, but you want to see the characters that we are. Please go take a look. Or not. You know, whatever you choose. Do what you want to do. But if you're going to do it, optimize it.
Absolutely.
Take care, everybody.
Have a great rest of your week. Hey guys, thanks for listening to our show. You can find Blake and I on social media channels at Blake Rayhans and at Stacie Mallon.
Be sure to follow Optimized AF on Instagram and rate and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes. See you next time.